Good morning and happy Tuesday, 10 at 10. I am your host, Richard Charpentier, and today for Tuesday, 10 at 10, you know the format. We answer questions that are received at BAKERpedia, and we do our best to answer all your questions within 10 minutes. So let's get started. The first question we received is how can I keep cakes fresh for 2 months for industrial processing using class 2 preservatives? Well, see, once we receive questions that, you know, first of all, I'm not quite sure what class 2 preservative means. It's probably maybe from England, from Europe. So I'm not sure. So when you send questions, please give more details into it. But overall, like I say to the similar questions regarding shelf life, because we do get a lot of questions regarding shelf life and shelf life extension. Now, it, the question I would have to you then is you're trying to go to 2 months, but where are you from 1 week, from 1 month? You're trying to add 1 week. How much extension of your shelf life are you trying to get? Because that's very important, because that means how you go about to change it. If it's from 2 weeks to 2 months, uh, then that means you're gonna have to look at your line. Sanitation is gonna be super, super important. The type of packaging you're using is gonna be super important. The type of formulation you're using is gonna be super important. So then you need to build it to get to where you need to be. Uh, and in terms of preservation, preservation is only the last portion after you decide, sanitation, packaging, formulation, and then the preservation system is going to mean like where is your water activity, where is the pH of your product, and then you decide what you do after that. Okay, so but that's a good question. We get a lot of similar question. Sometimes when you do R&D, you need a little more details than just what class 2 preservative to get to 2 months, because it's more involved than that. So, but thank you. Keep on sending questions. We love them. Uh, what is the optimal temperature to freeze my bread in a blast freezer? So, and for those who are not too familiar, and I know there is Dr. Lynn Carson, there's an article on the BAKERpedia on freezing and blast freezing. So go read it. Again, it's a great resource for free information, free membership. So, if you're not a member yet, please go join. I highly recommend it. So the difference is traditional freezing, it's the time it takes to reach the core of the bread. Blast freezing allows you to reach the core very rapidly. Usually you can do it within 90 minutes to get to like a 20 below Fahrenheit to the core, which is what you want. You're trying to prevent basically or crystallize the water molecule very rapidly. So you're preventing any stilling and you're sealing in the freshness of the product. So now, what temperature is the best temperature to blast freeze a bread? Doing a little research around it, it really depends. It's not just like a black and white answer to say this and that. It has to do with the type of manufacturer, the type of hair speed that they have with the different fans and how quickly they can cool it. But on average, if you go to 150 degree Fahrenheit or 70 degrees Celsius at the core, meaning you take a thermometer, you put your thermometer in the center of a loaf of bread. If it's a bowl, if it's a long bread, try to find a center point. Put your thermometer in and then read 150 degrees. Once it reads 150 degrees, place the trays in your blast freezer, and then you should be good. Because bottom line, you do not want to build too much condensation within your product. Your product is still be releasing moisture right outside of the oven. There needs to be a cooling period, and where you're starting to get to a point where you're not steaming again at this point. You might still be hot in the center at the core, but again, 150 Celsius, Fahrenheit, 70 Celsius will be ideal. But if you have a blast freezer, I will contact the manufacturer, the sales representative for the manufacturer, and check with them and see what their recommendation, because as mentioned before, it has to do with fan speeds and different gadgets on the unit itself that might allow you to do it, even earlier on. So, but that was a good question. And again, blast freezer is great if you're trying to preserve the freshness of a product. And because the other process, by the way, on the regular freezer takes about 24 to 48 hours based on the quantity and the mass of the product. Great question. Thank you. Next question. What is the accepted methodology to measure the internal temperature of biscuit and cookies to create a kill step? So kill step, and again, another great article on kill steps with BAKERpedia written by Dr. Lynn Carson. Go check it out if you have not done that. But it's based on the Food Safety Modernization Act, FSMA, that regulates the kill step for every food product. You would want to use either a data logger or a thermal profiler equipped with thermocouples. So basically, usually there are manufacturers who sell it. Some of you have heard it's called a Scorpio. It's a unit you put in the oven, and you have 6 wires, and you're trying to get different points within your product. And what it does, you bake your product with basically the data logger. It's set up for it. It goes into the oven. It travels through, even if it's a rack oven, tunnel oven, it will travel through. And as you bake, it will record the temperature. So once you take it out, you have to be careful because it's going to be hot. But once it cools down, you remove the unit. You would take that and you would plug it in your computer, and you would see basically clear curves at which temperature you get. But technically, a kill step, and I will read it up, but it's 170 Fahrenheit is a kill step. Most of cookies and biscuit do reach a point of 200 degrees if it's baked, of course, properly. So do check with the area in which you live, and to ensure what represents the proper kill step. And I understand that sometimes it can vary, but basically the tool, there's no, accepted methodology used for the industry, but data logger or a thermal profiler, as mentioned, will be a great tool for you to start doing that. And just log in, Google, type it out. It's going to link you to different companies doing that. All right. Last questions that we have today. What are the ingredients to extend the shelf life of cupcakes? So as similar question as the one we had earlier. What do we do to extend the shelf life of cupcakes? Well, it's called product development, R&D, research and development. So first of all, it's understanding the type of ingredients that you have, and understanding staling process, and on understanding starch retrogradation, and which is again all great things that it's free on the BAKERpedia. You can read about it. But the best is to have someone, a consultant, that could help you and guide you through, because it's a lot of little details to look over. So first, what kind of formulation are you using? What kind of proteins do you have in your product? Because it's as important, the way as the cake ages, the cupcakes are aging, moisture will transfer within your product. And how do you regulate that moisture within your product? Are you putting an icing on your cupcake? Are you putting a frosting on your are you putting a filling? So all of those questions are super, super important to know what you will do. Then the next thing is, after basically you have the formula done, what temperature which you bake, what's the internal temperature? Because I always say to people, if you want a good shelf life, you need to be no more than 205 degrees Fahrenheit coming out of the oven. Why? Because as you keep on baking longer, you're removing all that moisture out and you're making your product dry out faster over the shelf life. So being able to maintain a proper internal temperature is super crucial. Next is, once your product comes out, how do you cool it? People touching it, how's your sanitation of your program? How's your air pressure? How's the airflow of your bakery? Because remember, molds are basically everywhere around. They're here, they're on the table, they're in your hands. It's everywhere around. They move around. So what is the airflow? What is the air filtration you have in your bakery? What sanitation program do you have in your bakery? How often do you clean? Do the employees wear gloves? Do they not? So those are another question. And after, when you package, what type of packaging do you have? What kind of moisture vapor transfer rate, MVTR, do you have to ensure that the product couldn't last longer? It's not going to start sweating. What temperature do you package your product at? And then what is the pH of your product, and what is the water activity of the product? So as you can see, I know it's a lot, but those are all the crucial points and factors involved in extending the shelf life. It's not just one ingredient. I wish, if not everybody would do it. It's basically a combination. It's like building a deck of cards. You have to build it very well, but each card plays a crucial point into building the shelf life extension. And then last point, testing and validation. You can't just say, okay, I've done it. If you have a 3-month shelf life, you have to test and validate it for 3 months at ambient. And then if you go a step further, you have to do the same thing at different conditions and different temperature to just assume the worst. And then once you've done all that, usually if everything works, then you have a great shelf life and you can be confident that everybody, you're not going to have any issues, because at the end of the day, whatever you put out on the market is a reflection of you and the products you make. If consumers don't like it, they'll return it. And then, as we all know, then it's a loss in sale. And so get a consultant to help you out. At BAKERpedia, you can get a consultant to help you for 1 hour at a time. It's money well invested. But again, thank you very much. It was a great Tuesday 10 out of 10. You have a fantastic day, and I'll see you next week. Bye.